Yo, 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 Math by the Moon here. Today we're going to look at comparing and ordering real numbers. So get your notebook ready. Here we go. Let me share this out. We just double check to make sure my microphone is correct here. Built in. Okay, cool. All right, let me hide this. So on in your notebook, the first example we're going to talk about is this guy right here. So some cool things that we need to be able to do involving our calculator would be trying to figure out where some of these buttons are, like the pi button. Okay, the pi button on your calculator is, let me just push clear. So the first one, to order numbers from least to greatest, the easiest way to do this is to get their decimal. Okay, to get their decimal. And to do that, I got the calculator. I'm just trying to organize my stuff here. Hide that. All right. So to get the decimal for all of these, you're going to have to learn some buttons. So 2 and pi, if you hit the second and the up caret button, anything in blue on the calculator in blue is sort of like the shift button on your keyboard of the computer. If you hit shift, you get the extra characters above the letter or the number. And so anything in blue, if you hit second, anything in green, if you want green, you hit alpha first. So 2 pi should be 6.28. All right, 6.28. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to jot this in here. 6.28, and then the square root of 37 with a negative sign in front of it. So to do that, you hit the negative button, which is here, negative button. The square root is in blue right here, so we have to hit second, square root, 37, enter, and we get negative 6.08. So I'm going to jot that down, negative 6.08 approximately. Negative 6 is good. We can compare that. 3/5. 3/5 is one of our common ones. If you're typing in the calculator, 3 divided by 5, that is 0.60. Negative exponents. Negative exponents. So here's how we would type those. So you type the 2 for the base, then you hit the up caret, which is your exponent button, and then negative 2. All right, hit enter on that. That would give you 0.25. And we'll learn more about the negative exponent rule this year. 0.25. Okay. 5.9 is good. We don't have to convert that. And 6.4 times 10 to the 0. Probably the easiest way to do this is type the whole thing in. 6.4 times 10 to the 0. And you get 6.4. Yeah, we'll learn about the 0 power this year. The 0 power, anything to the 0 power is always 1. So it's really 6.4 times 1, so it's 6.4. Okay, 6.4. So the easy part on the CRQs for this would be just to order them. So like there's usually 3 to 4 parts of a CRQ. This would be the easy part, would order it. So I'm going to find the least to greatest. Pay attention to this situation, because if it's greatest to least, it's going to be reversed. And so it's your job to differentiate between what kind of problem you're doing. So I want to find the biggest negative. You're going to hear me say that quite a bit. The biggest negative is the smallest number. So the biggest negative is negative 6.08. So I'm going to write that like that. And negative 6.08 would be somewhere about here, right? So that would be the negative square root 37 on the number line. Okay. The next one is negative 6. And that would be like right here, right? And then, pardon me if I get one of these wrong, because I have to step back and look at it. It's a little bit easier when it's smaller on your notebook. Negative 6. Do I have any more negative numbers? No. Do I have any more? Anything close to 0? So this one's out. This one's out. I think what I need next is the 0.25. I need this one next. So that's 0.25, 2 to the negative 2. And one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is I'm writing these numbers not in decimal form, but in their original way that they were written. Okay, in their original way they were written. So that one's out. The next one I'm going to write down is 3/5. 3/5 is now out. And the next one I'm going to write down is 5.9. And then 2 pi. And then the 6.4 times 10 to the 0. Okay, so now I've ordered them from least to greatest. The most common mistake is in a couple of different places, sometimes messing up these negatives. Remember, the bigger the negative, this is definitely a bigger negative than this. The bigger the negative, the smaller the number. Okay, the more to the left of 0, the more to the left of 0, the smaller the number. And the other mistake that some kids make is they will write these down not in their original form, but in their decimal form. And they'll get stuff marked wrong because of that. It needs to be written in their original form. So 2 to the negative 2 is 0.25, somewhere about here. You're labeling a number line. 3/5 is 0.6, so somewhere right there. 5.9 is like right here. 2 pi is 6.28, so like right here. And 6.4, very close to that one. You don't have to put it on the number line. A lot of times I put it above the number line so I don't get all these clustered up like that. So ordering them from least to greatest, there's your first one. Next example. We have some more negative exponents. So when we type these, the way that you see it is the way that you have to type it. Those parentheses, they're hugs. So you want to make sure you use them. So parentheses right here above the 8, -2 to the -3. Don't forget where your exponent is. It's the up caret. So that's -0.125. -3 4/5 is -3.8. The easiest way to do this is just type the 4 divided by 5 in your calculator. That's the decimal part. 4 divided by 5 is 0.8. So I know that it's -3.8. I don't type the whole fraction, the whole mixed number in. Okay, -1/5. That's another common one that I know. That's -0.2. -√20. Get some practice typing that in. Negative second square root 20. You have to practice this, guys. You have to practice. You can't just watch this. You got to have that calculator open on your screen, and you got to be trying these buttons. If not, you'll forget it. You can't build a house if you've never built a house before, so you have to practice it. -4.47. This would be 2 spaces to the left to convert the percent, so it's -0.2025. -pi, find it on your calculator. Negative, and then second up caret. Negative, and then second up caret. -3.14. And this, we would move it 2 spaces over, so it'd be -3.25, right, to convert the percent to a decimal. Now, remember what I said earlier, the bigger the negative, the smaller the number. So we got to find the biggest negative, and we're going to start with that because it wants least to greatest. Okay, if this was the other way around, we'd have to be careful. The biggest negative is the square root of negative 20, or negative square root of 20. Square root of negative 20 is imaginary. So it wouldn't even be in this real number list. So I'm going to cross that one out because that one's done. Now I want the next up, biggest negative. The biggest negative is this guy, negative 3 4/5. Cross him out. We got to be careful here. The bigger the negative, so negative 325% would be next. Then negative pi. Okay. Now the biggest negative, we're still taking the biggest negative. This one is actually bigger, more negative than negative 0.2 because after this is just a bunch of zeros. So that one has a 0, then a 2. So this one would come next. It's the bigger negative, so it's the smaller number. Negative 20.25%. Negative 1/5. I think I left one more number here. Didn't have enough blanks. Negative 2 to the negative 3. So be very, very careful with negative numbers, okay? So here's what I want you to do. Well, I thought I was going to have you do an example or a practice, but I want to talk to you real quick here about less than and greater than symbols, okay? So this would be your less than. And this would be greater. So if we convert these, 1 divided by 500, and I'm using my calculator here, you can see me, 1 divided by 500 is 0.002. So if I line up the decimal point, 0.002, I know that what comes after this is another 0. So this 1 is greater than that 0. So we want the greater than, we want this number to be greater than, this number is less than. So remember, the open end eats the bigger number. So that's going to eat that one right there. Okay? This next one, 2 divided by 7 is 0.28571, blah, blah, blah. 0.28571. And I'm doing this on purpose because I know that this one is 0.2857 as a decimal. I have to move it over 2 spaces. So I'm going to line up the decimal, 0.2857. And after this 7 is a bunch of zeros, right? A bunch of zeros. So we're tied all the way up until that point. So the 1 is bigger than the 0. So this number is the greater than number again. That's our greater than. This is our less than number. 7 divided by 11 is literally 0.633. Oh, that's not mirrored, so it looks backwards. But it's the same thing. It's 0.63 repeating, and that's 0.63 repeating. So these are equal. All right, if I move this over 2 spaces. 4 divided by 25 is 0.16. 0.16. And this is 0.2. So again, I'm going to line up the decimal points, right? 0.16. And a lot of kids think 0.16 is bigger because it's got more decimal points. But remember, what comes after this 0.2 is a bunch of zeros, right? So think about it. It doesn't need to even show that. Right here, the 2 is bigger than the 1. So this is bigger than 0.2 is bigger than 0.1. So it doesn't matter. That's the bigger number. So we want the bigger open end to eat the bigger number again. Okay? So watch out. Line up your decimal points. As soon as you have an ability to differentiate between one being bigger than the other, it's a done deal. Meaning right here. It's done right here. 2 is bigger than 1. Don't have to go any further. Okay? It's not about how long the decimal is. It's about place value. So if you're at a tie and you move on to the next one and you're still at a tie, as soon as you can break that tie of which one's bigger or smaller, that's where it's at. Don't worry about the rest of it after it. It's not about how long the decimal is. Okay? So now I got these same problems, but now they're negative. And remember, the bigger the negative, the smaller the number. So I already knew this was negative 0.002, right? Negative 0.002. And what we said is there's all these zeros afterwards, right? So this one's actually the bigger negative. So now the bigger negative is really the smaller number. So now I want the open end. This is now the bigger number, right? That's the smaller number. So you can think of it as one of two ways. Your open end to your symbol always eats the bigger number, or it always points to the smaller one. Some kids like that idea of pointing to the smaller one. It helps them understand, especially when it comes time to doing these negative ones. So this one right here, we already knew this was 2 divided by 7 was 0.28571, and then it kept going. It had like a 4, blah, blah, blah. This is negative 0.2857 with a 0. So we're tied up until this point right here where the 1 is bigger than the 0. So now it's a negative though. So the bigger the negative, the smaller the number. So that's actually smaller. These are still tied. They're still the same decimal, okay? And these right here now, this was negative 0.2, and this one's negative 0.16. So this one's the bigger number because the 2 is bigger than the 1. But the bigger the negative, the smaller the number. So if you look at these now this time, all those symbols that we had on the previous slide, when they were positive numbers, they were all less thans. Now they're all greater than symbols. Well, they flipped actually, because this guy right here, I flipped these two around. I was trying to be sneaky. I did that. I forgot. I was trying to be sneaky so that you didn't just rush ahead. Actually, the kids in class are going to do this one by themselves, okay? So this next example, what do you think we're going to do? If you look at these symbols, they're all less than symbols in this one. We want to know, is this less than this, which is also this one then is less than this one. So you're going to read these depending on the symbol, right? This would be a least to greatest then. Is this least? And this would be like the middle number and this greatest, right? If that's the case, then this is true, right? This one here, is this one greater than this one, which is still greater than that one? Now, that would be a greatest to least then, because of the symbol being greater than. We can't do any of these until we can say what their decimals are. So I need to know what 8 divided by 13 is, which is 0.615. 0.61538, yada, yada, yada. And this is going to be a 1.31. So if I wanted to order this from least to greatest would be 8 out of 13 is less than 0.72, which is still less than 131%. So that's my least to greatest model. If I wanted to do greatest to least, I would go with the 131% is greater than the 0.72, which is greater than the 8 over 13. So it is so important to read your symbols. So important to read your symbols. Now that we have the way that we wrote it out, the correct way has got to be here. One of these is correct. Either way, I need the 0.72 in the middle. That's a guarantee. The tweener. The 0.72 is the tweener. So that's the only one with a 0.72 in the middle. And then boom, boom. I'm at a least to the greatest. It's this guy right here. It works. Okay? So don't think for 1 second that it might not be one of these too. I might have the greatest to least be the correct answer, okay? So using your symbols for a least to greatest, you use the less than. Using your symbols for a greatest to least, you use your greater than symbol. Try this one. So, you ready for the answer to that first one? There it is. There it is. The second one, I want you to jot it down. Try it on your own. See if you can get it. Keep in mind, you line up the decimals if you need to determine which one's bigger or smaller. Remember, the bigger the negative, the smaller the number. You ready? There's the answer to the second one. Now, don't forget, the least to greatest one has a less than symbol. The greatest to least has a greater than symbol. Okay, guys? So let me know if you have any questions. Jot them down, bring them to class for Tuesday. If you're a remote kid, type me a little email, all right? And we'll go from there. Later.